And joining me now from Glasgow is Rebekah Newsom from Greenpeace UK. Rebekah, listening there to the British Prime Minister talking some fairly strong words, I mean, he is a late convert to all of this, isn't he?
Yes, well, this government in the UK definitely is saying some of the right things when it comes to tackling the climate emergency. And indeed, in Boris Johnson's speech, we heard some good stuff. We heard a lot of emphasis on the need for more action, and we had some hope from him, which is absolutely right at this stage in the conference. But the UK government is not matching its words to action, and in that sense, we need to see a lot more from Boris Johnson. In particular, even today, we've had a commitment from the UK government to new climate finance for less developed nations, but that is a total distraction because it's not guaranteed money, it's not even new money because it's just going to come from the aid budget. And when it comes to new oil and gas, the UK government is still leaving the door open to new licenses at a point at which global scientists and energy experts are saying that would be incompatible with the goal of the Paris Agreement of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. So we need to see Boris Johnson matching his actions with his words and doing a lot more to make this conference a success.
And talking about what needs to come out of this summit, Rebekah, I mean, it could be very different to what agreement is finally reached, I mean, compared to what's been talked about at the beginning. So what realistically is Greenpeace hoping for?
Well, as I say, we need to see action, not just warm words at this conference. And in particular, we need to see all world leaders agreeing to no new fossil fuel projects. We need to keep all new coal, oil and gas in the ground, because otherwise we will bust the goal that world leaders agreed of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. And we also need to see much more support for less developed nations. We've had so many promises to give finance to developing countries, including $100 billion a year, which has not been met. And until we see those promises delivered on, we will not see the cooperation that we need to get more action over the next fortnight.
So do you think world leaders have got the message that this event is really last chance saloon?
I think it's clear from some of the language coming from world leaders, including from Boris Johnson, that we face a very grave crisis and we need to see a lot more action. But I'm not sure yet whether world leaders have really understood what that means in terms of transitioning our whole economies away from fossil fuels, promoting renewable energy, stop destruction of our forests around the world, and actually supporting many of the most vulnerable communities that are experiencing the crisis now. So I think we need to make them realise that we will not accept anything less than ambitious, radical action, because otherwise the whole world will suffer.
Yet China, Brazil and Russia have all made their excuses and are not attending. Does that itself water down any agreement that will be reached?
Well, in fact, we have heard today that we will be getting a statement from the Chinese government at some point over the next few days. And also, it's important to remember that many of the most vulnerable countries on the front line of the climate emergency, the Climate Vulnerable Forum, the Africa Group, they are all pushing for more action and more ambition. And that has a huge amount of potential to change the politics and to shift more action in the next 2 weeks. So I still think there's a lot of hope that we can achieve more at this conference, but we need to stay focused and we need the world leaders to feel the pressure.
Can you just break down for the viewer and myself, for that fact, Rebekah, what exactly should that final agreement look like? What are the key bullet points that need to be reached?
So what we need is world leaders to agree to update all of their plans and their targets for 2030 so that we actually halve global emissions over the next decade. That is the most important thing. And within that, that means no new fossil fuel projects, so we need commitments to that. And then finally, we need to make sure that we don't introduce any loopholes that allow big polluters to carry on polluting and greenwashing, alongside the package of finance to support the countries on the front line of the emergency experiencing the crisis right now.
Rebekah, in terms of what has been agreed upon before and what might come out of this summit, are you feeling at all optimistic? I mean, especially when you take into account what's happening domestically in a lot of these leaders' nations, particularly in wealthier countries, where the green movement is gaining political strength. I'm sorry to keep pushing you on this, but I really want to get a sense of what is going to come out of this, given this has been dubbed as the world's last chance to get it right.
No, well, you're completely right. And the public pressure and demand for action now is at an all-time high. Even in the UK, we've recently had some polling that has shown climate change is the number one issue on the minds of the public. That even comes above the economy. And that goes to show just how important this issue is and how much pressure our world leaders are now under to make action actually happen. So I am holding out hope because of the pressure from youth strikers all over the world. Even, in fact, we've got some youth strikers from other parts of the world on a Greenpeace ship sailing up the river in Glasgow today to deliver that message. But the other reason that I have hope is that countries on the front line of the climate crisis all over the world, small island states, less developed countries in Africa, are stepping up and they are pushing for much more ambitious action than we have ever seen them calling for before, including action to phase out fossil fuels. Because at the end of the day, if we don't see that action happening, we're not going to get the outcomes we need at this conference. But much more pressure from these countries, much more pressure from the public, I think gives us a big source of hope that we can achieve some of the action to cut emissions at this conference over the next fortnight.
Rebekah Newsom from Greenpeace UK.